Hello to everybody. We continue with our program. Now I would like to introduce our next panel. It is mining and sustainable development, also very, very important subject in this moment. And we will have a fantastic presentations today. So I would like just to invite our moderator, Mr. Henry Hall, Director of Critical Resource. It's an ERM group of company. Henry, the floor is yours. You can invite your speakers.
Thank you very much, Jadar, and thank you all of you in attendance for joining us today. As Jadar said, this is a very, very important topic and one that's close to all of us panelists' hearts. And we have a great panel today to discuss it. I will introduce the panel in a little while, but first of all, I just wanted to frame this topic a little bit and tell you what my sort of background is and my thoughts are on the topic. I'll then introduce the panelists in a little bit more detail. They'll then give some of their thoughts on the topic and through their sort of professional experiences of this area. And then finally, we'll have some time for questions and answers, and we look forward to getting some good questions from the audience. So, as Jadar said, I'm Henry Hall. I'm a Director of Critical Resource. My own academic background was actually in political economy and development studies, so an unusual route into the mining sector, but really the sustainable development topic's very close to my heart. And the mining industry really has a huge role to play in sustainable development. Done right, mining can help countries realise their potential and really bring about broad-based economic development. And done wrong, it can result in the worst excesses of corruption, conflict and poverty. Despite some unfortunate high-profile failings in recent years from major mining companies, the low-carbon transition really only serves to reinforce the need for mining. We'll need ever more copper, aluminium, battery metals and many other metals and minerals in order to realise this brave new world that we need. However, mining does need to be done differently. It needs to be done innovatively, sustainably, with stakeholders at the forefront. And in order to be part of this new world, that change needs to be realised by all of us attending this conference. And investors and governments and downstream consumers are increasingly demanding ever more from mining companies. So what do? So Mining Critical Resources is a firm that specialises in political and ESG issues in this space. We work with a really big range of companies, so majors like Anglo American, BHP, Rio Tinto, right down to junior exploration firms like Adriatic Metals, Reservoir Minerals and Savannah Resources. We've worked a lot in the Balkans over the years, including in Serbia, Bosnia, Bulgaria, Macedonia and Greece, and on a range of government, community and NGO issues. And essentially our job is to help companies to really understand what's driving stakeholders and their interests in a project, and to structure projects that really demonstrate the value of mining to stakeholders and communities. In order to be successful, any mining company really needs to show first that they're mitigating any potential negative impacts resulting from their interventions. And once they've done that, it's really vital that they demonstrate their value proposition and demonstrate why developing a mine in a community is likely to bring real population to the benefit at large in terms of taxes, jobs, procurement, infrastructure, social investment, training, technology, and many other areas that the great minds of the industry are thinking of in more detail. And we're increasingly helping companies to do this by carrying out exercises to work with stakeholders to really build a shared vision of what a mining investment can do to help transform a community in a region. And it's vital that when a mine succeeds, the community succeeds as well, and that the benefits from that mine really flow towards reinforcing existing national, regional and local plans and priorities rather than being abstract from those ideas. So to move on now to our panelists, as I say, we have an excellent panel of speakers for you. In the order that they're listed in the programme, First up, we have Marnie Finlayson, Managing Director of Borates and Lithium for Rio Tinto. Marnie includes within her responsibilities the Jadar project in Western Serbia that you all know very well, which should show us a lot about the future of the mining industry and how sustainable development can be done. Secondly, we have Ivy Chen, Principal Consultant at CSA Global. Ivy is a colleague of mine from the ERM group of companies. She's a geologist by training with a passion for sustainable development issues and the importance of factoring in ESG into project economics. Next up, we have Nikola Kjurchiski, Territory Manager Balkans for Weir Minerals. Nikola is a Macedonian-born and Belgrade-based resource economist and Territory Manager for Weir Minerals, a provider of mining technology and services focused on the beneficiation process. And finally, we have Branislav Grbovic, Project Director and Regional Director for Southern Europe at Wood. Branislav has extensive experience undertaking engineering, procurement and construction management work for mining projects in the Balkans and has been working recently on an ambitious lithium refinery project in Australia, among other projects. So that's our panel. I'll now hand over to Marnie, first of all, to give us her thoughts on this fascinating topic. Thank you, Marnie.
Thank you very much, Henry. You can see my screen? Just checking that it's up. Yes, excellent. All right. Well, thank you. And firstly, I'd like to congratulate TGI Group International for your very agile adjustment, given the conditions in Serbia at the moment, to move to a virtual conference. I think you've done an excellent job on this 10th anniversary of this fabulous conference. And thank you very much for your invitation, both to present, but also to sponsor this important event. Firstly, I'd just like to point out that this presentation was prepared by Rio Tinto, and please kindly review and respect the statements on this slide. So as Henry said, my name is Marnie Finlayson. I'm the Managing Director for Borates and Lithium. Most recently, prior to this role, I was the General Manager for the Jadar project. So I have been based in Serbia for well over 2 years now. I'm a mineral processing engineer. I've worked for Rio Tinto for nearly 13 years now across a range of different commodities, including iron ore and diamonds. I'm a mother of 2, and I wanted to share with you the reasons that we actually came to Serbia. So firstly, the opportunity to live and work abroad has been incredible for my children and my family. We're really enjoying the experience and looking forward to many more adventures living in this beautiful country. Secondly, the Jadar project is a very challenging project, and I like challenges, and there's lots of examples of how the team here has worked with innovation and technology to tackle these challenges. And finally, like Henry, I'm very, very passionate about sustainable development, and I believe in this project because I believe it's important for the world, for a low carbon future, and is so important for Serbia in terms of the economic development that the project will bring and to the community in which we operate. So firstly, I wanted to touch on a little bit about Rio Tinto. So our assets that we operate really do mirror the global demand themes, and we're a leading mining and metals company. We operate in 36 countries and we have over 45,000 people. So if you look at the products listed on this slide, iron ore is very important for urbanisation. Copper and aluminium are integral to electrification, particularly of transport. And finally, the area that I work in, which is minerals and ventures, is really around products for the future, and it's a big focus of our organisation at the moment. So we have a very clear purpose in Rio Tinto, and something that really resonates with me and the team on Jadar. We produce materials that are essential to human progress. And as we enter into the third decade of the 21st century, Rio Tinto has been mining and refining products for nearly 150 years, and we're transitioning to products of the future. We are committed to what we call the 4 Ps, they've been coined by our CFO. We want to make sure our portfolio reflects our ambition for the future. We have to perform in order to make sure we continue to compete in markets. Our people really are our most important asset, and it's something that I firmly believe. And finally, it's around partnership, and that's partnership particularly in the countries and the communities in which we operate. So as I said, we supply those materials for a low carbon economy. Earlier this year, we released our commitment to climate change. There's a number of different aspects of this that I'll cover today, but there's two that I really wanted to call out. The first is a commitment to reduce the carbon footprint of our operations and to be net emissions neutral by 2050. This is quite an ambition if you think of the 36 countries that we operate in, and we don't quite know how we're going to get there yet, but it's absolutely an ambition that is shared by all of our people. And secondly, to produce materials for the future. So an example of our commitment to this future is that we did exit from our coal division in 2018. So very, very symbolic of our commitment to this. Another point I'd like to touch on is that 76% of the electricity that we utilise on our operations does come from renewable sources. And there is more investment coming for existing operations in this space. It is also very important that all new projects that Rio Tinto is looking at are fueled by renewable energy. And this is something that I'm appreciating the really good support from the government of Serbia in this space for the Jadar project. And sustainable performance is really supported by strong profitability and results. In Rio Tinto, we have gone now 2 years without fatalities. And this has been a big effort because we've been operating, as I said, for nearly 150 years. And up until now had not been able to have a fatality-free year. So our commitment to our people is through safety being a value and a priority in everything that we do. In terms of our impacts, we've had a 46% reduction in emissions since 2008. As I said, 76% of our power comes from renewables, and we've got $100 million new investment in solar in our program right now. And in our climate change approach, we do not mine coal or extract oil or gas. Our targets are listed here, and as I said before, we are working very hard on our ambition to be a net emissions neutral by 2050, and this does include growth being carbon neutral. And as I said, this is the challenge for the Jadar project on our pathway now. But underpinning this is a $1 billion investment over the next 5 years on climate-related spend and that ambition for 2050. So now, even more than ever, as Henry touched on in the introduction, our industry is being reshaped by societal expectations, geopolitics, and technology, speed to market and access to data. So what does this reshaping look like for Rio Tinto? For us, it's to work in a way that provides long and lasting benefit. Our pioneering spirit is really about enabling our employees to solve challenges and deliver results with this frame in mind. And we all have a shared passion for this sustainable future. The second is about the materials that we produce, excuse me, and producing them responsibly. As I said, safety is not just a priority, it is a value for Rio Tinto. We also have a very, very strong ethics and integrity standard that is the same across all 36 countries that we operate in and applies to all 45,000 employees, plus our contractors and consultants. We take a position of transparency, because we believe that access to information and sharing that with our key stakeholders is critical to build trust. And we firmly believe in reducing our footprint, as shown on the target slide previously. And in terms of partnerships, we believe that the materials that we bring to market will enable this low carbon future. And this in Serbia does include the development of the downstream value chain from a lithium producer. And we firmly believe, as Henry has also touched on, that we need to provide long-term value, not just for our shareholders, but to the communities and the countries and the governments and to our employees. So we do believe we are part of the solution and we take accountability for that. We're working very hard to utilise technology to drive that. The first is around tailings. We are looking across a number of our assets, including Jadar, for ways to develop our participation in a circular economy. Some of these include reprocessing waste, which we're actually starting to do at our boron operation in California to produce lithium. So we have a pilot plant that is starting up there on that, but also to find future uses for this waste. And it's one of the big targets that I've given to the Jadar team to find a future use for the waste. Water management is also very important. I grew up in outback Australia and I absolutely appreciate that every drop of water is precious. So our focus on all of our operations and projects is to absolutely reduce our consumption and to recycle as much as we possibly can. And finally, I've already touched on the renewable energy drive. And yesterday you would have heard from my colleague Todd about the electric equipment that we'll plan to utilise in operations in the future. The Jadar team, a team I'm very proud of. We have a project team centred in Serbia across 2 locations here, so both in Belgrade and also our project site in Loznica. But they are supported by global experts, both within Rio Tinto but externally, because as I said, this is a challenging project and it needs very good teamwork to solve some of the challenges we have. And I'm really impressed with the talent that we have here in Serbia in our team. Every week I welcome our new recruits to our team and are continually impressed with their connection to this project and their understanding of the importance for this country. So our project pillars, I could talk about this project all day, but firstly, the geology. It is a new mineral. I think many of you know that. It's got a picture of it behind me called Jadarite. It's a Rio Tinto discovery in 2004. And since then, we have drilled over 300 multi-purpose holes, which is the equivalent of 200 kilometres of core. The mining itself, the ore body is a high-stress soft rock ore body, which means we've had to use the very best of expertise to come up with a mining method to ensure it's safe and sustainable. With our processing, we had to work out how to economically extract lithium carbonate battery grade and battery boric acid from this new mineral. So we've conducted over 2,000 tests to prove this, and we now are confident that we have the technology to do this processing. And much to the dismay of our geologists in Loznica, a lot of the 200 kilometres of core have gone through this processing facility to test it. And finally, waste management. This is one of the areas of biggest successes for this project in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, our waste solution was a slurry dam in a valley. And as Henry said earlier, there have been some really terrible examples of issues with slurry tailings around the world. So we've worked very hard to come up with a much more sustainable and acceptable solution, which is now a dry stack tailing. And I'll cover this shortly. We've also been very focused on communities environment. This is our biggest team on the project and has been in place for a long time. We've conducted a number of baseline studies, and our objective is always to minimise the impact to the environment and maximise the opportunity for our local community and government. Cultural heritage, the Jadar Valley is very rich in cultural heritage, and I'm very proud of a partnership we have with the University of Belgrade Archaeological Department and the Jadar Museum. We are working with them hard to protect this heritage for the future. And finally, our people and our partnerships, which bring all of this together. So I heard the Australian ambassador say at the opening about if it's not grown, it's usually mined or recycled. I think someone else added on to that. And it's true, like every item that we use contains minerals and metals and is either grown or mined or recycled. So what are we planning to build at Jadar? It will be an underground mine, 2 shafts, one for access and one for ventilation and development through to the ore body. It will be an integrated process plant that will produce battery-grade lithium carbonate. From my home country, there is a lot in Australia, there is a lot of hard rock lithium mining, but a lot of that lithium is produced into a concentrate in Australia and sent to China for processing into the compounds that go into batteries. That is not the case here. We will do all of that processing in Serbia, and that will be fed straight into battery production and EV manufacturing. Another few things on the process plant, there's been some misfacts that have come out about our process. It does not include flotation, and the temperature in the whole process does not go above 100 degrees Celsius. And then we'll also need support infrastructure to connect the site and the project area to supporting areas. So 21st century mining really defines all that we do. And I won't go through this because I know you've heard from my colleague Todd at length about this yesterday, but it is absolutely an area that we pride ourselves on. We use the very best of technology and smart use of data to optimise our operations and projects. So the geology, so this deposit was found in 2004 through some really good science and smart business sense, once again with a really good collaboration between Rio Tinto and the University of Belgrade. We've had a very fruitful exploration phase that is now concluded. As I've talked about, there are all the holes that we have drilled. And we've collaborated with over 90 local and international scientific and technical partners to make sure we deeply understand this ore body. That is absolutely key to a successful project, is to ensure you absolutely understand your ore body. And I'm really proud to say that in the last 2.5 years, this drill program has been completed with no injuries. And at times we've had over 13 drill rigs working on this site. So a huge achievement by the team. So sustainable solutions, what do they look like for Jadar? The first is this is an underground mine. So it's a minimal surface impact from the mine itself. We will have an electric mining fleet. Will be state-of-the-art technology, both underground and on the surface. And in terms of our waste solution, as I said, we've moved from a slurry waste solution to a dry stack, and we are still optimising that location. It is very important for us to minimise our impacts, and our location objectives are to have a smaller footprint, to allow progressive rehabilitation and closure, and to reduce our overall environmental impact and community impact. I've already covered cultural heritage, but with our communities, we have had a very early, regular and consistent engagement with our community stakeholders. It is very important to us that we understand priorities and concerns. And in the last 12 months alone, we've held 19 open days in Loznica and Brziac. They cover a number of different topics, including environmental compliance, cultural heritage, and supplier development. Through these open days and also the information centres we have in both Loznica and Brziac, we have engagements with our community members. Through this, there are a number of examples where we have listened and responded. So one such example is through the spatial plan adoption that occurred late last year. Our Brziac citizens raised with us that they were concerned that the public hearings that are held, and these are held by the government, was only planned for Loznica and they may not be able to attend. So we engaged with the government and asked for a second public hearing to be held in Brziac to allow our local stakeholders to attend, which they were very appreciative of. The other point that I wanted to touch on is we have commenced land acquisition in the core project footprint. This is a very sensitive and serious process. We are doing all of this in accordance to not just Serbian, but also IFC and Rio Tinto standards. And we are committed to being fair and transparent. And this includes the really important livelihood restoration part of the program, which is not just for the landowners themselves that we buy the land off, but also those that are impacted by that land acquisition process. Environmental stewardship. So I did talk about baseline studies. So we've completed 12 of those across a variety of different areas covering air, noise, water, waste management, biodiversity, a number of topics. These have been completed with really solid Serbian expert participation, so nearly 100%, and are critical for the next phase of our project. These baselines then enable us, with our detailed design that we now have, to conduct our environmental impact assessments, and these are underway. These will all work to reduce and eliminate impacts as much as we can. And as you can see, they will be subject to public hearings, and the timelines are listed on these slides for each of those environmental impact assessments. And this engagement process is very important to us. So finally, what is the path forward for Jadar? As I said, it is a new mineral. It's a new technology and it's a new market for Rio Tinto. So something that we have to consider very carefully. However, it is very strongly linked to our climate change commitment and everything that our organisation is about for playing a role in a low carbon future. Recently, the Rio Tinto board approved an additional $200 million to fund the feasibility study phase of the project. This brings the total spend and commitment to $450 million US on this project. This final phase looks at detailed engineering design, the approval of our elaborative reserves, and progressing the permitting and land acquisition programs. All of this work is critical to be ready to present this project to the Rio Tinto board for a final investment decision at the end of next year, so the end of 2021. A key focus of this project has and will continue to be to deliver it in cooperation with the government of Serbia in a manner that is safe and sustainable for everyone, for the community, and for Rio Tinto. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks very much, Marnie. Fascinating stuff. Let's move over to Ivy now for her reflections on this topic.
Thank you, Henry. I'm just going to now try and share my screen without blowing everything up. So bear with me, everyone. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Ivy Chen. I'm based in Perth, and I think as Henry pointed out earlier, I'm a geologist. I've been working in mining and resources, and through there, developed an appreciation for how important it is that our projects not only look at the value in the ground, but what everything else around it in terms of the people, the environment, and everything else that interacts with our projects. We're not standalone. We are part of a society and a community, and it's important that our projects also recognize that. And particularly working with my colleagues at ERM, we are trying to turn a lot of these wonderful concepts into quite quantifiable and measurable measures, which we can then use to track projects, how they're funded, how they perform, and ultimately how they return to investors, more than just dollars in the bank, but also in terms of how we respond within our society and our community. So starting onto this, climate consciousness is very much a part of our mainstream conversation these days. Regulators, stock exchanges, project financiers, they're all interested in disclosure around these matters. And this interest is impacting the way our projects are reviewed for funding and for approval. So changing people's perceptions of mining as dirty and old well, and making it part of the clean and green sustainable activities that contribute towards mitigating the effects of climate change is quite critical. After all, almost every initiative, I think, as Marnie pointed out earlier, towards improving energy efficiency and sustainable energy sources actually depends on the output from the mining industry. The steel for wind turbines, aluminium for turbine blades, lithium, nickel, and magnesium for batteries, neodymium, boron, and dysprosium for magnets, cadmium, silver, molybdenum for solar panels, boron and phosphorus for semiconductors, and it goes on. And even for countries that permit it, uranium is a potential alternative to burning coal or fossil fuels. So it's this perception that's difficult to change. Oh, sorry about that. I'm jumping ahead of myself. And as mining professionals, we rely on logic, stats, and figures. We're really good at that. But there are also many other tools which we could also learn to use from a different world, from our really nicely ordered comfort zones of facts and graphs and tables. And these are really powerful tools that can change hearts and minds, and more of this from other presenters and throughout the conference, I think. So here, these are some of the major global financial institutions which have actually made ESG issues part of the way they assess project risk and when they consider finance. So paying attention to ESG factors allows easier access to capital. It allows potentially lower cost debt and equity capital. And in a way, lower carbon risk equals higher, firmer values. Carbon footprints of the investments that financial institutions undertake are being scrutinized as part of the greater focus on ESG. And investors themselves are demanding that institutions which invest on their behalf understand the risks their portfolios pose. This investor pressure is pushing financial institutions to understand their own climate risks, and in turn, the institutions are placing pressure on mining companies to disclose their climate risks. Companies which can demonstrate that they understand ESG and behave responsibly are generally rewarded by being able to finance their projects more cheaply. And a company that can demonstrate clear measures to address ESG issues can potentially be more valuable to investors than one that cannot, because the ESG-ready company has recognized that risks of not being seen to be a good corporate citizen can carry a high cost. And the incidents around the world have demonstrated this correlation recently in Brazil, in Australia, and over in Europe back in 2000. In Baia Mare, there was an environmental incident in Romania that saw significant economic impacts that went beyond Romania, that resulted from damage caused by that one single incident. So the TCFD and the SASB are potentially two frameworks which have metrics based on disclosing scopes 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions, as well as disclosing the metrics used by the organization to access climate-related risks and opportunities in line with the strategies and the risk management processes, describing the targets used by the organization to manage climate-related risks, and also a way of assessing opportunities and performance against targets for mitigating climate risk again. So the SASB framework was founded to develop sustainability accounting standards. It comes from Canada, I believe, and its aim is to establish industry-specific disclosure standards across ESG topics that facilitate communication between companies and investors about financially material and decision-useful information. Such information should be relevant, reliable, and comparable across systematic independent evaluation of evidence-based research, stakeholder consultation, proposed updates, public comment, and ratification, all of which are subject to public transparency in a system that's done well. So we need to be able to measure and to be able to compare and to have a basis for these comparisons. Some of the data is collected when we measure and report greenhouse gas emissions. This data and analysis is already being collected by a lot of our colleagues, the environmental specialists, the ventilation engineers, and data such as groundwater volumes and composition, dust, noise, fumes, and diesel particulate levels. So we already build resource models, which often now include geometallurgy. So we look at the linkages between geology and how it can be recovered. We potentially could also build geo-enviro models. Oops, again, sorry about that. So geo-enviro models, maybe even geosocial models. A lot of these parameters, which at the moment we look at in terms of yes or no measures, we can actually try to measure and potentially to assess and grade in terms of confidence, how much we know about this, how much information we have about these, how much can we rely on these measures that we are trying to create. And then from here, the mine plans and ore reserves that measure and schedule all this data, as well as the traditional grade tons and recoveries and processing. So our models will potentially become a lot more complex, but they could potentially also be a lot more predictive and try to build a framework to then measure and reconcile against. We said that we would do these in terms of ESG factors. Have we been able to achieve them? And this is a framework which is going to be quite familiar to people who work in the mineral resources area in terms of estimation. It's the JORC Table 1. It's also in Crisco template and in PERC, which is used through great parts of Europe. And it includes considerations of environmental, social, and governance factors, the bit that's circled in red. So it allows us estimators to compare the confidence that we can ascribe to different projects, which can be very different in terms of size, type of mineral content, geological environment, countries in terms of sovereign risk, processing pathways, markets, and so on. So it's a framework which allows us to compare one project to another, to assess them as investors might. And these modifying factors have historically been part of the consideration as mineral resource estimations. Really sorry about this. My computer is trying to do things that I'm not telling it to do. Apologies. So these processes could be aligned with when we uptake the TCFD or the SASB protocols. And these require disclosure of the derivation of the assumed modifying factors as inputs and the classification of these terms in terms of the confidence attached to them. In very much the same way that mineral resources and ore reserves are classified, we can also potentially classify these inputs into the TCFD or SASB in a similar way. Not exactly the same, but in an analogous sort of an approach. This one here is an example of the work that my colleague Sam Ulrich does. He's doing his PhD looking at the greenhouse gas emissions of gold projects in Australia compared to the rest of the world. So this is Sam's expertise, and he looks at the impacts of emissions on a project's potential value. This graph compares the gold produced by different companies in Australia and Canada in terms of gold produced on the x-axis and the greenhouse gas emission intensity on the y-axis. So the detailed company information is not quite so critical, but I hope you can read it. But as you can see, the Canadian companies are mainly in the lower emissions category, while the Australian companies are leaning towards the higher emissions category. And Canada's greater abundance of hydroelectricity is one key contributor to this difference. And Australian companies need to really think about this quite long and hard to see if we can change this comparison and this equation. So if this and other ESG related considerations become key metrics in the future for project finance assessments or for project valuation, there are quite significant implications for the choices that investors might make. And really, the most optimal outcome in these circumstances would be a framework that's actually designed by us in industry to deal with this sort of thing. So from here, ESG's relevance circles back to ethical project funding from banks and superannuation funds driven by shareholders and investors concerned about climate change. Lower interest rates will go to projects that are more sustainable with smaller environmental impacts, lower emissions, and a reduced risk of environmental contamination. The disclosure regimen will eventually require mandatory disclosure about how companies are mitigating project risks in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, climate change mitigation, social impact in areas such as modern slavery, conflict minerals, corruption, or money laundering, and governance issues such as board and executive diversity or conflicts of interest. And in the past, all of these were generally regarded as high-level strategic, executive, or board concerns. But with the increasing focus on ESG issues, all of us in the mining industry will need to become more aware of what reporting is required and to think about how we can best provide this information on our level in terms of the metrics and the technical details, and how we can supply them to the decision-making process and the evaluation and assessment processes to allow meaningful decisions to be made. And that brings me to the end of this, but I think I would like to encourage everyone to think about how we can contribute to this whole ESG equation from our respective fields of technical expertise and endeavor, because it's not completely foreign, it's not new, it's not unusual, it's always been there. We've just never really paid it as much attention as is required now. So we need to think about it a lot more, and we need to factor it into what we do every day on a regular basis. So I think on that note, I will end and hand it back to Henry. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Ivy. Really insightful stuff there, and really great to get another quite different sort of perspective to Marnie on from a different position within the industry, which I think will carry on through our remaining two presenters. So without further ado, over to you, Nikola, to hear a bit more about your perspectives on this topic.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nikola Kjurchiski, and I'm a territory manager for the Balkans with Weir Minerals. More specific, I'm in charge for the following Balkan countries: Serbia, North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, and Montenegro. By vocation, I hold a Bachelor in Science in Computer Science, MA in Change Management, and I am a PhD candidate at the Russian Presidential Academy of National Economy and Publishing. Weir Minerals is a global engineering and equipment manufacturer company. With a history of 150 years, we work in partnership with our customers to solve their toughest challenges safely, efficiently, and sustainably, helping to provide the essential resources needed by a growing world. We at Weir are very passionate about when it comes about safe, healthy, and environment. And we are proud that we can put ourselves in a world-class safety performance companies with our Weir Zero Harm policy. For the past 3 years, Weir has outperformed industry peers in terms of safety performance. As you can see from the chart, for the last year, we made an excellent progress with our underlying total incident rate, falling to 0.27, which is down 40% from the previous year and making us one of the safest industrial companies in the world. I have divided my presentation into 2 segments. First segment is a sustainable development, but from macroeconomic perspective, because ultimately, I think this is what we are looking at. And the second part is how Weir Minerals is contributing to the sustainable mining and sustainable development. When we talk about sustainable development, I would start with a story about Philip II of Spain. I believe that all of you have heard the phrase, the empire on which the sun never sets. This phrase was first used to describe the enormous dominion of Philip II of Spain in the 16th century. During his almost half-century rule, Spain's territory stretched into all known continents. Reaching the zenith of its military and political might, Spain was also receiving very significant amounts of what today's economists would describe as a windfall profits. The court of Philip II was flooded with shipments of gold, silver, jewels from its colonies in the Americas. However, despite that, Philip the Prudent, as he is also known, imprudently ran into bankruptcy 5 times during his reign. On the back of the inflow of precious metals and stones, he took out increasingly large loans, the interest on which was so great that he could not pay it, even with the continued inflow of colonial shipments. Therefore, the empire of Philip II became the best known case falling victim to dependency and a case of unsustainable development. However, the first significant systematic and comprehensive study of economic problems associated with natural resources published by Sachs and Warner in 1995 under the title Natural Resource Abundance and Economic Growth. That study laid the foundation for what later became known as the resource curse hypothesis. I believe you also heard about this. The main finding of that study was the economies with a high ratio of natural resource exports to GDP performed worse than the world average. So I ask the logical question, how's that possible? But let's first provide a definition about what a sustainable development is. According to a definition by UNDP, sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs is considered to be a sustainable development. I think this is a definition which is explaining what we are striving and what our goal is to achieve our own present without compromising the future generations' future. I will show you a couple of real country examples about it. As you can see from these 2 charts, I'm comparing 4 countries. On the left chart, you can see real GDP per capita, PPP, in 2 South American resource economies, Venezuela and Chile. And see how this line is going. In 1960, Venezuela was much, much richer compared to Chile at that time. And Venezuela went from being one of the most well-off countries in Latin America worldwide in the 50s and 60s to a period of stagnation and decline. Over 2 decades, between 1980 and 2002, its real income per capita declined by 25%. In 1988, 2.4% of Venezuelans were living below the poverty line, while in 2015, just before regional turmoil, that percentage was staggering 19.7%. And we can imagine what is the percentage today after the civil unrest in that country. Several years before the governmental crisis in Venezuela, while the political situation was still stable, Venezuela had produced less oil than it did 50 years ago. And why this is important? I believe you know that the biggest proven reserves of oil are possessed actually by Venezuela. It is not Russia, it is not USA, it is not Saudi Arabia, but Venezuela possesses the biggest proven reserves, and still it's performing when it comes to economic and sustainable development. On the other hand, Chile had its own fight and its own tough periods during the Allende and Pinochet's regime. These were the times of not, let's put it this way, not significant growth of the economy. But after this, after 1990, you can see that the line is going sharply up. Second case, it's Botswana case, African country, which from 1966 to 1989, Botswana was actually the fastest growing economy in the world, transforming itself over that period from one of the poorest states to an upper middle income country. This success has largely been due to both strengthened institution and prudent management of Botswana's diamond revenues. Nearly a quarter of the world's diamond reserves are located in Botswana. And Botswana follows a strategy of fixed public spending, allowing the government to accumulate revenue surpluses during boom years. And this helps to mitigate the impact of price volatility, allowing the government to maintain public spending when commodity markets turn bearish. Below this, I put some more readings in case you are interested about this phenomena, the resource curse, Dutch disease, etc. On the next slide, you can see the Hoteling's theory or Hoteling's rule. Basically, there is a theory when we talk about a finite, non-renewable resources. It was posed by Hotelings in 1930s. And basically what it says is saying that the price of the finite, non-renewable natural resources should increase constantly over time. And it is logical. But this is only a theory, and some economists have serious doubts about it. If we want to see the real case, not the theory, I invite your attention to the right-hand chart, where you can see how hazy the commodity prices could jump up and down. On this chart, you can see 1995 as a reference point for the commodity price of several metals, including oil, which is a non-metal. But nevertheless, and you can see what is the difference between compared to this reference point within the time. So basically, this is how a reality of the commodity price looks like, and this phenomena is called as a commodity price volatility. It is a one specific property of the commodities. It is true that the resource bonanza could induce appreciation of the real exchange rate, deindustrialization, and bad growth prospects, and that these adverse effects are more severe in volatile countries with bad institutions and lack of rule of law, corruption, and underdeveloped financial systems, and so bringing other adverse economic as the Dutch disease and the commodity price volatility. But not everything is doom and gloom. Actually, the resource abundance can contribute very positive to the sustainable development. A number of countries with high level of economic freedom and strong institutions, such as Australia, Canada, Chile, Norway, etc., demonstrate that demonstrate that it is possible to build a prosperous and innovative economy with a significant share of income from the sale of minerals. Furthermore, sound institutions can help diversify the economy and weather the storm of low commodity prices.
Nikola, I'm very sorry to cut you off there. I'd love to hear more and listen to the rest of this fascinating presentation, but I'm aware we're running over slightly, and I just want to give Branislav a bit of time to present his ideas before the end of the session. But fascinating stuff, Nikola.
I was just about to start the second part about weird minerals and how weird minerals is contributing to the sustainable development. So do I have this time, or?
I'm afraid not. I think we've only got about sort of 7 minutes left in the session. So apologies, Nikola, but I think we'll have to hand over to Branislav.
I hope you will all get my presentation till the end. And in case anybody has any questions, can get back to me.
Thanks very much, Nikola. Really fascinating take.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate.
First of all, dobar dan svima u Beogradu i u Srbiji. Good day, good evening here in Perth to Ivy and everyone who is watching. Okay, so presentation is up. Well, thank you very much for inviting me for this year's conference. This is not the first time that I'm speaking, and I'm very happy to be here with you, and I'm quite impressed with the quality of presentations over these 2 days. Yesterday, I really enjoyed a couple of presentations, very fascinating. So we don't have much time, and what I would like to say is yesterday we've seen lots of exploration groups, we've seen technology providers, we've seen local authorities this morning or this afternoon. We've seen a couple of mining groups like Rio Tinto, Dundee Precious Metals, equipment supplier, Weir and so on. So I come from a company called Wood. We used to be called AMEC Foster Wheeler and previously Mimproc. And how do we fit here? So I would just briefly like to show you who we are, in a few words. We are a big international engineering group, about 55,000 people in over 60 countries, operate worldwide, and we provide engineering services. As I mentioned, we used to be called Mimproc, and I come from Perth, Western Australian office of the company. Mimproc was established about 42 years ago. Initially, it was involved with engineering for gold mining, and it was always well recognized for its processing capabilities. Our processing group has always been the largest processing group in Australia. And very quickly from gold industry, we did move into HPAL, into nickel, into other commodities. And mining business and technologies like that, you start with the gold, and very soon, in 3 or 4 years' time, you see there are a number of other companies who can do the same thing. So we were always motivated to enter new territories, and to try to develop new technologies. So what is our role? Effectively, I would summarize it as, let's say our role is to make your dreams come true, or to deliver projects to our customers and local communities to their satisfaction. So we can be one-stop shop, or we can do, do the whole project from geology, mineral resource estimates, or we can do metallurgical test work and design, do detailed engineering, and we can deliver projects or support existing operations. I was very fortunate over the years when I was coming to Belgrade and to this conference and others. I was always able to show something new, some new real project, something to show and demonstrate what we are doing, but also to share these experiences, what real projects look like. And it is very important because Serbia is traditionally mining country. However, it was very unfortunate that in the late 80s and 1990s, because of the war in the region and everything, there were big issues, and there is a big gap in delivering greenfield or big projects. Although in 70s or 60s even, there were some major mining projects that were globally recognized. So this slide effectively demonstrates what we've done, what we recently delivered. So we delivered projects on, for example, on EPC basis in Turkey. EPC is effectively for engineering, procurement, construction management. That project is for Alacer Gold, Canadian company. And right now it was fully commissioned, to client satisfaction, very successful project. As a testament to this project, we won now another project where we are adding a flotation plant to this same mine, So again, it's remote in mountains toward Syria, and a big challenge to put this pressure oxidation facility up in the mountains of Turkey. You've all heard, I'm sure, about Ada Tepe Krumograd project in Bulgaria. We've done this beautiful process plant, and Niki Hristov yesterday did talk a bit about it. It's a great project, and this is actually the first greenfield mining project for a couple of decades in Europe and European Union, of significant size. We've gone through full permitting with our client, and it was delivered and put in full production. It exceeds design parameters, and we are very happy and proud of it. And then I did make a note of this Gruyere gold project that we've done for Goldfields and Gold Road, which is again great. We have great pride for that. So because I don't have much time, I will just quickly, when we talk about sustainable business, there are two aspects that I would like to talk about. One is how we see it as our business, how are we going to develop as engineering group working in mining? And effectively, what sustainability means to us is really how to balance economic, social, and environmental issues when we are making decisions across our business. We definitely stand up and we talk about sustainability, and we try to influence people. We try to influence our contractors. We try to influence communities where we are working in. So what do we do? And again, I think most of the people have mentioned three things. One is social, which is people, environment that we are working in and that we need to protect. And it's economy of profit. Of course, we are all working to achieve some profit, but this profit, we recognize that everyone needs to be involved, that we have to be innovative also to deliver profit and benefits to communities where we are working in, to our clients, and to our own people. In terms of, what is fundamental to do this for us is our team and our people. We have a multicultural team. We have a team that has different backgrounds and everything, but we are all still aligned, in our goals, and we try to deliver benefit to everyone. And as I said, to protect the environment, to care about our people, and to care about people that we work with and local communities. So in addition to our business, there is also this big question, okay, what is sustainable development in mining industry or mining development? And everyone was talking about this, and that's very good. What I would like to do is, rather than repeating others, there are two or three topics that I'm very passionate about. And one is, there is a perception when we read in papers or we watch TV or we talk on different panels that there is a shortage of mining wealth in coming decades. But I don't feel that way. I believe that we've just scratched the surface. Of course, challenges are greater, but also there are advances in mining and methods for processing minerals. And quite a few people were talking about this. So what our role is really to be ahead of our time, to start to develop new technologies. And rather than complaining that grades are going down, that we have to dig deeper, or that we cannot achieve recoveries and so on, we have to put our smarts and to use our experience and to develop these technologies. And Wood is exactly the company that is leading this way. The other thing that I would like to mention is also, there is also quite frequently concern, you know, that mining is difficult business, that you can't deal with that. And there are big issues that no one has resolved and so on, that you need like 25 years of experience to start to understand the mining issues. I don't believe that's necessarily true. I believe that recent advancements in technology have definitely benefited our business. And there are a number of examples, and each speaker, I think, in some way did identify a couple of positives. And it's true that we don't know what future brings, but we have experience, we have professionals who can adapt these processes, technologies, and everything. And we are working in that regard. And third, but last aspect is really who can influence this. There was a nice example in one of previous presentations about Baia Mare disaster that happened in Romania, and there are a number of others in Brazil and so on, this tailings facility. So the way I see this, it's shareholders that need to do something about it, and it's no longer sufficient to meet expectations. We have to predict, we have to forecast what are the future challenges and go above these expectations. And a good example why shareholders are important is, again, the recent incident in Brazil when we had almost 300 people killed with that disaster at the tailings facility. And then a group of investors led by Church of England, a pension fund, and I think a Swedish pension fund, did approach 675 mining groups requesting direction and transparency in dealing with tailings. And you're all aware about this new standard on tailings, global standard of tailings. And just simple fact that this group led by Church of England represents 13 trillion, not billion or not million, 13 trillion investment in our mining industry tells you everything, so who's going to say, okay, mind your business or something, right? They're the ones who are paying for new projects. So I think shareholders are essential to get involved with this, and they are involved, but we need to see this much more frequently and to set the standard. So what future holds for us? Some things that looked quite challenging in the past now look just ordinary, and we are looking to solve new problems. And I put one quote from Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest, if not the greatest inventor, and again, Serbian origin, of course, and that's why I put it, one of the reasons. Things that looked fairly complex to us, and difficult to resolve 5 years ago, are now just a standard thing to do, and we should be looking for something new that will again become very ordinary, in a few years. And as I said, I was always very fortunate to bring something new to present what it looks like. And sometimes when people are talking about new projects, whether it's in Serbia, Bulgaria, in some other parts of the world, they would like to see how it looks, what are the implications, rather than someone telling them. And as you mentioned, we are building a lithium refinery, or this terminology is sometimes difficult in Serbia. At the moment, they call it chemical plant or chemisko postrojenje. So these are effectively the converting facilities. Now, why is this so important? Obviously, you've heard that Rio Tinto is working on a Jadar, which is a hard rock mine, and there is a facility. And most of mines in Western Australia, we have about, I think, 7 lithium mines. It is all hard rock spodumene, and as mentioned, most of it is, all of that is exported to China, where refineries are. But outside of China, you don't have a single refinery, hard rock lithium. The only 2 refineries are there. One was built in Western Australia recently, but it hasn't been commissioned and in operation yet. And the second one is one that I'm showing to you. It's done for American client, and it's a fantastic project for us. We did start about 2 years ago, and while I'm talking, I think picture tells the 1,000 words, but videos probably more than that. So I'll play a short 1-minute video.
I'm not sure we're going to have time for the video. We've just got 10 minutes left for questions. So
just 1 minute. So it effectively shows you how we built it over time and gives you some impression what it is like, what it looks like. We are obviously very proud of it. And
perhaps while we watch the end of the video, I'll just pick up one of the questions from the audience.
Okay.
I think there's been a couple of questions placed towards Marnie around some of the, I think, the controversy that I think Marnie picked up on there in terms of perceptions of environmental impact. So I just wanted to give you a chance quickly, Marnie, to address those concerns that have been raised recently.
Thanks very much, Henry, and thank you to the audience members for the questions. As I mentioned in my presentation, we have undertaken a lot of baseline work to understand what the baseline environmental conditions are. And we are now, through the design, modelling what the potential impacts are. What happens through this process, and Rio Tinto's approach, is to reduce and eliminate as much as possible those impacts. There's actually already a number of examples where we've done that on our design, including rearranging the layout to reduce any dust or noise impacts outside of the project area, and also some of the controls that we put in terms of the equipment that we plan to use. Another point that I wanted to raise is in terms of water, and I know there has been some concerns that we will be releasing water straight into local rivers. Any water that we release, and as I said earlier, we will reuse and recycle as much as water as we can. So the only water that will be released will be excess. We'll go through really significant water treatment using reverse osmosis, and will be better than the water that it's being released into, and very strict protocols in our ability to do that. The other thing I just wanted to make mention of in terms of the question around our community's expectations, we are still absolutely committed to implementing this project in cooperation with all of our stakeholders. We will continue our open days, and in fact, our dialogue with our community and our stakeholders will intensify in this phase. So we're planning a lot more of those. What we have learnt, and I think a number of us listening in will understand this, is as engineers, we do have very technical explanations of what we're planning to do. And what we're learning is we have to get much better at explaining our plans. It's definitely a big learning because it is a very complex technical proposed project, and explaining it well is something that we're working really hard on at the moment. The other thing that we're planning to do is make sure that we're really clear on the benefits of the project. I didn't mention this in my presentation, but our PFS estimate says that the Jadar project has the potential to add 1% to Serbian GDP. As well as that, during construction, there'll be over 2,000 jobs, and during operations, there will be over 700 highly skilled jobs. So another thing that I'm hearing is that they'll be low skilled jobs. That is not correct. You've heard me saying that Rio Tinto utilises the very best of technology, and that type of technology needs highly skilled people to operate. As well as these direct impacts, there is lots of add-on benefits to the community through contracting and services. The other thing that we are working on, and another question on this, is at this phase of the project really starting to have very detailed conversation with future customers, so down the value chain. Through these engagements and these detailed engagements, we will absolutely test battery producers and EV manufacturers' appetite to manufacturing in Serbia, and that's a commitment that we've made to the government. What we do know in initial conversations on this value chain is what's really important for this value chain is firstly renewable energy. Sustainable production of the raw materials that go into batteries and EVs is very important from an ESG point of view. So that is important to these downstream manufacturers. And secondly, they are really excited about Jadar and the closeness to the EU, and obviously the massive transition that the automotive sector in the EU is going through to EVs. So they're excited about this project, but absolutely would want to see renewable energy as a first pass in order to consider even investing and building in Serbia.
Thanks, Marnie. That's brilliant. And just to give Nikola the microphone again for the last part, I think that lots of audience members disappointed to not hear more about from Nikola's fascinating presentation. But I mean, Marnie was just talking about technology there. How do you feel that sort of technology, and especially the technology that WEAR's putting to bear, can support the sustainable development agenda and help out with some of these challenges we've been hearing about?
Yes, thanks, Henry. Well, in terms of technology, I will try to be shorter this time. I will point out just two technologies. First is dry comminution. That's how we call it. And we achieved this with the high pressure grinding rollers, or HPGR technology. I put in the presentation 2 slides for the traditional wet flow sheet process, and then dry sheet flow sheet of the dry process on the Iron Bridge project. It is a real case from Australia. So you can look these benefits. What we are achieving here, we are trying to take out the water out of the process, which is significantly decreasing the environmental footprint. And by taking out the water from the equation, what we are achieving is that we have a dry stacking as well, and which significantly decrease the cost operation. And of course, it's, as I said, is impacting very positive on the environmental footprint. The second thing is our Synertrex technology, which is digitalization of all our equipment. We understand, when we recognize that the trend will go towards this dry processing, even though WEAR Minerals is most famous about its wide palette of pumps and pump application solutions. But we think the future is going toward that way. And together with the Synertrex technology, which is digitalization of all our equipment to monitor in real time all the parameters of the specific equipment. And this we can install that on pumps, crushers, screens, cyclones, into hoses. And we also have this optimization part of this technology, of this software, which is telling actually, is setting the parameters of the equipment to the most optimized way, because every application is different. There is no one, two same applications, and the parameters the parameters would be different for both these things. When I heard yesterday a thought from Rio Tinto saying that we can go and check the pumps parameters and check the maintenance history, I thought he was talking actually about Synertrex technology, and we really look forward, hopefully, to assist Rio in this endeavor.
Thanks very much, Nikola. No, fascinating to hear more from you. I think we've run out of time, and I think all of us would be very happy to speak about this subject all day. So many thanks to all 4 panelists for your contributions, and very sorry to those I had to cut short and those questions from the audience that we couldn't cover. But thank you everyone for joining us, and it was a real pleasure on behalf of the whole panel.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you everyone. It was great.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Henry. Thank you all panelists. It was fantastic, really, all panel and your presentations. And I will, of course, share all your presentations in PDF after the conference, probably for tomorrow. I will send to everybody links. And now I would like to also to have a couple of minutes, a break, also for our commercials, and then we will start with the next panel.